Okay, so the last poll that was won was animation frame by frame versus animation tweening, and animation frame by frame won. If you guys want to vote on the poll of the week, don't forget to look in the description and see what that is for the week. But now I'm gonna talk about the my view on just toxic fandoms and communities in general, which obviously they're toxic. And I think in every fandom there's like a good and a bad side. So there may be a good side, like for instance with furries, how the good side is like the family friendly side and all the new kids and all the people that are just there to have a good time. And then there's the bad side where it's like the mersuiting and the yiffing and like the kind of gross stuff that they may expose to children and whatever, which is not a good thing. But I think toxic communities can come in a lot of different forms, because there can be like toxic where all the participants of the fandom may like attack each other over dumb ships or like whatever. That's an opinion that may be a very subjective type thing, not an objective type like canon part of the show or the book or the whatever. And I think that a lot of people in communities kind of tend to think that their opinion is right no matter what, and like the ships that they have are like the only ships that can happen whether they're canon or not. And I've noticed that in a lot of communities, specifically a lot of anime fandoms, there's a lot of gay ships with like people that either aren't gay or aren't like men. And then they kind of romanticize and they kind of just obsess over these ships. And that's definitely a really toxic part of a lot of fandoms, as well as shipping people that are either siblings, family, it's like illegal, like the age gap, or any sort of thing like that. I think that sometimes fandoms can look like all glorified and look very fun to be in, but then when you actually get into the fandom, you start to see the kind of like bad sides of the fandom, and you start to see why there may or may not be like a lot of people in the fandom. And I think it's like definitely more personal, like how people want to perceive fandoms and stuff, because I know, especially with like the Five Nights at Freddy's fandom, since there was a new game recently, Security Breach, a lot of people are mad that Monty replaced Bonnie, and to be honest, I don't really care. They're both really good characters, and I both really like them, but a lot of people are really mad about it, and they're like, oh, well, Monty's like this and that, and they're just like, whatever, and then people start to ship characters, and people try to make things like overly explicit, maybe, that may be a kid's game or a kid's show, and then they make it explicit, which isn't necessarily bad, because people can do what they want. It's not any of my business. But when people start to share things and say things that maybe are either against somebody else's opinion or just maybe could make somebody else uncomfortable, that starts to become a problem, because people start to force opinions onto other people. And then with that, a lot of toxic fandoms try to create an image of the game or the show or whatever that it may be that isn't actually what is like canon and what's supposed to be a part of the whole like show or game or whatever. And I think genuinely when people try to make a sort of fandom or whatever believe something and like make it canon and whatever and force the creators to do something, that can be a problem. But if people just want to have headcanons and just like have their own little designs and whatever of characters, that's great, and they can do that, and that's not a toxic part of the fandom. It's just once people are constantly fighting about character design or why a character would do something or if a character is like a certain way. And I think also in a lot of communities, a lot of more toxic communities definitely, people try to quote unquote fix art or change somebody else's art or whitewash or blackwash a character because they don't like the design or they want it to be how they want it instead of maybe a design somebody else came up with or a design that was canon but maybe somebody doesn't like the type of character or whatever. And that starts to become a problem a lot within fandoms, I've noticed, because people start to headcanon characters as maybe a certain race or a certain nationality, and then people are like, oh, but you can't blackwash them, or oh, but they'd be like this race. And that starts to become an issue because I know a lot of people just want to share their headcanons and their art that they may have made, but then other people go and fix that art, quote unquote, and they may like whitewash a character or change somebody else's design. And I've noticed, especially in the animation meme community and art community in general, there's a lot of other people fixing people's art. And that's a huge problem, especially when it's like somebody's own character design and then they quote unquote fix it just because it may be a certain style or whatever. And then it's also a problem when people are either intentionally or unintentionally and don't apologize for being transphobic, homophobic, xenophobic, whatever. And that starts to become an issue because there's a lot of different sides of fandoms that are kind of just different areas. And while these fandoms may divide and it may change the kind of like different designs or different things that people may want, I don't think it's a problem if you're just like maybe adding something or critiquing something that's just like to be nice or whatever, and you're not like being rude to people and you're just like, hey, maybe you could change this, or hey, if you're like drawing a bigger person, you could just add this and this. But then people go and bully other people for doing something because they don't know how to do it, and then that kind of makes them not want to be able to fix it because they don't want to go elsewhere and look for guidance because they feel like that if they look for guidance, then people are going to continue to bully them. And then that's what happens in a lot of communities with a lot of younger kids in communities that may be new to the community, like new furries or whatever, and then they get bullied and they don't get the chance to improve with whatever they may be doing, whether it's sewing, whether it's drawing, whether it's just crafting, whether it's building something, whatever. It could be just the simplest thing, and people bully them over it because either they don't like it or they don't want to help the person improve. And a lot of people I've noticed, especially on TikTok, just kind of bully people because they either are jealous or they just think they're better than the person or whatever. And then that becomes a problem because then the person that's looking for guidance or is posting their art because they're proud of it can't improve because people are just like, oh, ha 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 ha, this looks so bad and whatever. And they don't give tips that are like, oh, maybe you could do this to make the structure a bit better or whatever. And a lot of people just kind of harass each other in a lot of fandoms, I've noticed, because they may not like a ship that was proposed, or they may not like something canon that's going on and they want it to change because it may not fit with whatever ideals they have for the show. It just kind of depends on how people want to perceive a fandom and how people want to interact within a fandom. Because I know there are plenty of good people in a lot of fandoms, but then there's other people who just bully them for it and don't help them improve or aren't kind to people and gatekeep things and whatever. And there are times when gatekeeping can be okay if it's like somebody's doing something bad to an audio or a character or whatever, and they're making it like absolutely horrible, and then they're sharing it with people and they're making the people uncomfortable and stuff like that. But if you're just gatekeeping because it's like a song and you don't like quote unquote like normies or whatever else using an audio or a type of content or whatever, then that becomes a problem. And I think definitely in general people need to chill out with like toxicity, because a lot of people just kind of bash other people for no reason. Maybe they were having a bad day, or maybe they're just upset, but whatever. There's not really a reason for fandoms to be so toxic, and I think if we could sort this out, then it would definitely make fandoms and interactions a lot better. And so I think that's just kind of my whole view on toxic fandoms, and I think that a lot of people just need to realize what they may be doing is wrong and that whole thing, so that just kind of depends. But yeah, that's my view, and I hope everybody has a good day. Don't forget to read the description for any information you may be looking for, but yeah, have a great day or night. Goodbye!